SG Sifuna, how do you determine the message for each particular meeting? Or it's just everyone to come and speak your mind?
Well, first of all, I want to correct my brother there that in fact these political rallies, we do endeavor to have some sort of uniformity in messaging. There are things that we have agreed upon, need to come out in terms of the core message, what it is that we intend to do for the people. For instance, there are messages that are determined to be no-go zones, which is where our friends find themselves in trouble with things like madoadoa. It is very exciting, by the way, to be in front of a crowd of thousands and thousands of people. So it is not always possible to regulate every single word that will come out of a politician's mouth. But what you give is general guidelines of what is the thrust of the message. Sam, I really want us to move away from this pretense. You know, unless you are a stranger in Jerusalem, you know that these claims of rigging of elections has been around us ever since we started voting at multi-party elections. And for me, I would really encourage, you know, in South Africa after the fall of apartheid, there was something called a Truth, Justice, Reconciliation Commission, that in fact people be allowed to speak freely about some of the things that have happened in the past. I was very encouraged, for instance, when somebody like Mike Sonko comes out and he said, you know, we usually blame ODM for violence, but some of it, we staged it ourselves, you know, because we have struggled as a party with this image that we are a violent party, yet there are other players who actually actively contribute to this. When ODM has raised the specter of election rigging in the past, they have said that we are crybabies. So if somebody from the other side comes out and says, by the way, this thing, we have done it before. And by the way, in my view, Sabina's statement must be taken in context, the first part and the second part. Of course, I would never encourage any leader to allude that, in fact, there was any intention to subvert the will of the people.
Well, the first part is?
That is what we are. But the first part, that in fact, in the past, there have been reports of rigging. She was just echoing what happened in 2017. You can call it something technical, but Maoka would ask you, what was that technical problem supposed to achieve? If you refuse, for instance, the constitution or the law requires you to send a physical picture of the results form and also to transmit it in text. If you don't do that, you call it technical. But what is it supposed to achieve? I, as SG of ODM, I was not SG then, but I was one of the lawyers in that election petition. I was charged with the audit of the server at IEBC. We spent days there, my brother Sam, and they refused to allow access, even with a court order from the highest court in the land. Even up to today, they have never opened the server of IEBC for us to be able to see which results were in there. So if somebody tells you, you know, rigging of elections is like infidelity. In law, they tell you, you cannot prove that your wife has slept with someone. It's very difficult to prove because you probably need access to the room, video, and so on and so forth. It comes down to something called inclination and opportunity. That is how you prove infidelity. So even in rigging, it is very difficult to find somebody with, you know, a stash of ballots, physically putting them in the box. But where there is questions and circumstantial evidence, for instance, the inference that was drawn by the Supreme Court, by the refusal by IEBC to open the server, which they have never done to date, was that there was something sinister in there. The so-called technical challenges or problems that were highlighted must have been to achieve a certain end. So let us not pretend like we don't know that now, there have been problems with elections.
When Sabina Chege says that sio wao tu wako na ujanja, what does that mean?
That's what I'm telling you. I have started by saying, I would never countenance anybody suggesting that we could you know, subvert the will of the people at an election. That is not who we are. And especially from our perspective as ODM, having been victims from 2007 up to date, having been victims of election manipulation, we would never advocate for that. And because we actually believe that we have a superior message, we have a superior agenda, it is possible for us to just go to the people and convince them that we have a better plan for the country than anybody else. But what we do not want is this hypocrisy. And as a lawyer also, I have a few problems with the IEBC summoning Sabina Chege. If you are calling somebody to appear before a code of conduct enforcement committee, when has that code of conduct checked in? Because I know as an aspirant, I will sign a code of conduct at the date of nomination when I present my papers to the IEBC. As far as I know, none of us, maybe if Koech has signed. And the jurisdiction of the IEBC only begins when you have signed a code of conduct.
I thought they said that the Election Offences Act and the code of conduct come to effect once the commencement of election period.
No, they are talking about enforcement of a code. You have to subscribe to that code. There is no indication that, for instance, Sabina is running for any.
No, fine.
You have to subscribe to the code before you.
But when they gazetted,
and the IBC's mandate does not extend to limiting the right of people to free expression. There is a different entity that is supposed to do this. So I am also going to be accompanying Sabina because I am very interested to know what is this jurisdiction that the IBC is invoking.
That's interesting because just hold on. When they published the notice of general election on the 21st of January, they also said that the Code of Conduct and the Election Offences Act become effective. So I'm just wondering, you don't it apply because the member has not. I am saying that
ordinarily the Code of Conduct Enforcement Committee would come in force after we have signed the Code of Conduct, after we have subscribed to the code.
All right.
If, for instance, some preacher somewhere, if it wasn't a politician.
But Mheshimiwa, if you are running, and I know you are running, would you go and be a guest in Harambee this weekend?
No, I wouldn't.
Why?
I wouldn't go because the law is that, but it is not even the IBC to enforce that. That is not the mandate of the IBC.
December 9 came into force.
Yeah, I know.
2 August.
Yeah.
So why would you not say that one is part of the Electoral Code of Conduct? No,
but that's what I'm saying. The Enforcement Committee of IEBC, that's the body we are addressing. It is possible that there are other enforcement bodies that would come into play.
Okay.
Because the law is there.
All right. I'll give an opportunity to Honorable Mboye.